Katrina Shanks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's my pleasure to take a call on the second reading of the Copyright Infringement File Sharing Amendment Bill tonight. I think it's interesting to note that this bill is to replace the original bill of Section 92A from 1994 under the leadership then of the Labour government of Judith Tizard. And as we know, when we talk about technology and we talk about how fast it moves, actually, since 1994, technology has moved extremely fast. And what was relevant then isn't necessarily relevant now. So it's important when we're looking at legislation around technology, and, for example, this, which is very narrow, which is about file sharing, that actually we get a bit of legislation which can stay true for a period of time and won't be outdated. So it's more principle-based, I believe, and that's the way it should be, to ensure that it stays current for a longer period of time in a very fast-changing environment. Now, the Select Committee worked really hard on this bit of legislation, I've got to say. We had it for a long time in our Select Committee, and in fact I felt very sorry for the officials when they first came in, because, I think I'm relatively savvy when it comes to computers, but when it comes to file sharing, which actually is mostly not my generation, I've got to say, because it wasn't around when I first started using computers, it actually took them a while to explain what file sharing was to a few of us on the committee. And actually it came down to, we had little boxes sitting along the front of the Select Committee, and they'd explain how it takes a bit from this box and a bit from that box and a bit from this computer. So you've got 1,000 little bits and it makes up a file, which actually takes a bit to get your mind round. So it does, that's right, Steve. So it took a little while for the committee to get its mind actually round what this bill was about, and came to, at the end of the day, what this committee came to a compromise, because we had a huge debate over how do we discourage file sharing and how do we ensure that we're not over-regulating or that we're not over-penalising people who file share. But it's really important to remember that file sharing is actually an illegal activity. And so two things that we talked about. One was ISP warning notices. So you've got a provider, you've got Telstra or Extra who gives you your internet connection, and they give you a warning if they think you've breached by using file sharing. And then you can get a second warning and then a third warning. And with that also, we talked about, it's not just about breaching it, but knowing that you've breached it. We've mostly got a whole generation out there and coming through that actually don't understand that file sharing, or don't care, but I think that's not necessarily true, that they actually don't realise that what they're doing is illegal. And actually it's not right, because what we've got out there is we've got peer-to-peer file sharing programs. So you can actually go out there, put a software program on your computer and file share. So what's wrong with that? And I know, I've got 3 children who are on the internet all the time, and I actually don't know if I'd know how to find it, actually, as a parent, about whether they were file sharing or not. I'd like to think they aren't, and I'd like to think that we educate our children about it. But until I had this bit of legislation before me in a Select Committee, I actually didn't know about it, I've got to say. And it's quite different to copyright, where someone sends you a file. That's different again, because if someone sends you a file, you may be breaching a copyright, as opposed to what this legislation is about, which is actually about file sharing programs, peer-to-peer file sharing programs. So I think it's important, because I know there are many kids out there, especially, in Ohari or my lecture, which has got a very high usage of computers, especially in the youth. I think it's really important that we go out and we educate our youth and the parents about what file sharing is and how we shouldn't be doing it. And it is different to copyright, so bearing all that in mind. So, Mr Speaker, I'm looking forward to debating this further in the House through committee stage and third reading. Thank you very much.
Jacinta Ardern.
Mr Speaker, it's